In the mid-20th century, Sweden was lauded as the epitome of a prosperous, equitable Scandinavian welfare state, a beacon of social democracy and economic stability. Its model of healthcare, education, and social equality set a global standard, making it a source of admiration and envy. Yet, what was once a symbol of success has now morphed into a cautionary tale, revealing cracks in a once unblemished facade. There was a time when Sweden was looked upon by American liberals as an inspirational example of the Scandinavian welfare state. Although Europeans were less impressed, even the country's immediate neighbors tended to, grudgingly, accept Sweden as a senior brother. After staying out of World War II, Sweden had evolved into a high-performing export-oriented economy based on a stable parliamentary democracy and social consensus. The country had top-notch healthcare and education. It enjoyed social and gender equality, had low crime rates, and little ethnic conflict. While grounds remained for optimism about some of these indicators, especially in the industrial sector, most have been transformed beyond recognition. Present day, Sweden carries the dubious distinction of having the highest rate of gangland killings in Europe. It boasts the lowest average age of serious offenders, with children in their low teens being arrested for murder. Increasing segments of suburbs are officially classified as especially vulnerable areas, where it is hard, bordering on impossible, for the police to operate. In layman's terms, these are no-go zones, where local clans rule and where first responders will not enter without flak jackets and police escort. An early warning was provided in 2017 when United States President Donald Trump made a quip about rioting in Sweden. "You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden, who would believe this?" Who indeed? At the time, such comments were met with disdain and ridicule. Today, it is not so funny anymore. Sweden has transitioned from being a model of inspiration to becoming a warning example. As gangland violence is spreading across borders, its Scandinavian neighbors experience growing fears of ending up in what is known in Denmark as the Swedish condition. Defying an old taboo, the Swedish government has called on the military to assist the police. It has even come to the point where the governor of the Bank of Sweden, Erik Thedin, tells the Financial Times that the growing problem of shootings and bombings is so serious that it risks damaging the country's long-term economic growth. Given the negative impact that a statement of this kind will have on markets, it is not to be taken lightly. Central bank governors weigh their words very carefully. Economic and educational fallout on the rise. While the deterioration in physical security is causing Swedish nationals with entrepreneurial skills to leave the country, it is also becoming increasingly difficult for industry to recruit high-level talent from abroad. For a knowledge-based country, this is serious indeed, and the central bank is far from alone in raising the alarm. Warning bells have been sounding with increasing intensity for some time, and the political sphere has finally begun to shed its long-standing denial. The problem is that few, if any, seem to know what can be done. The main cause of the crisis is a combination of an open-door migration policy with no accompanying policy to help the newcomers integrate. The consequence has been the emergence of neighborhoods where almost all residents are immigrants, where unemployment rates are very high, and where the children of immigrants go to schools where no other children, often not even teachers, are proficient in Swedish. This has served as an incubator for crime, as gangs take over where society fails. Politicians take notice. Having been long in denial, even the Social Democrats have now released a report of their own, recognizing that 2 decades of excessive immigration and failed integration have produced a national crisis. Even if the government were to close the door completely on further immigration, which is clearly not going to happen, the share of foreign-born residents will likely still increase, for demographic reasons. As the foreign-born population has a lower average age than the indigenous population, it is bound to have a higher rate of growth, even without factoring in cultural preferences for the number of children per woman. Among residents aged 25-34 years, 1/3 presently has a foreign background, and among those aged 35-44 years, it is 38%. Not all migrants are the same. At a casual glance, these numbers need not be taken as evidence of a dark future ahead. Those who take a positive view of migrants and asylum seekers are right in pointing out that Sweden has a long history of successful immigration. The Swedish government has recently commissioned a study of the costs and benefits of migration to be broken down by countries of origin. It is expected to highlight the current challenge, the task of integrating large numbers of illiterate adults with many children. Shifting religious makeup leads to new demands. The heavy influx of migrants from countries with Muslim populations could lead to a situation in which Sweden elects a radical Islamist party to parliament, potentially as early as the 2026 election. The Swedish name of the party is Nyans, which translates interestingly into nuance. While virtually all Swedes were Christians from the 12th to the early 20th centuries, that share has fallen to less than 60% today. It is not inconceivable that Sweden will have a majority Muslim population sometime this century. The trend is bound to energize Islamist circles that are calling for a divided legal system, where Sharia law applies for Muslim citizens. Getting tough on crime is not enough. An optimistic scenario departs from the fact that the non-socialist coalition government that came to power after the September 2022 election is busy creating legislation to tackle the crisis. In the words of Justice Minister Gunnar Strömmer, the ambition is to achieve a systemic change, where a long-standing focus on rehabilitating perpetrators is replaced by a clear focus on victims. The legislative agenda is built on inspiration from Denmark. It features much longer sentences for serious crimes, double penalties for gang members, and special prisons for young offenders. It offers new tools for law enforcement, ranging from rights to electronic surveillance of gang members even before crimes are committed, to the introduction of visitation zones where police may stop and search even in the absence of suspicions of violations. And it includes a substantial boost in the creation of prisons to house convicted felons, including plans to rent space abroad. Doing so would require the dispersal of migrants to different regions and the requirement that children of migrants learn the local language and values, as in Denmark. The reason why this is not being considered in Sweden is that the existing agenda is already viewed as so radical that the outcome in the next general election is impossible to predict. The essence of a pessimistic scenario is that the electorate may fail to live up to the fundamental principle once established by Immanuel Kant. Whoever wills the end also wills the means. For the time being, there is strong popular support for something to be done. But once viewers get inured to images of innocent bystanders being killed by children wielding assault rifles in public spaces, then leftist legacies from the past will come to the fore, undermining law enforcement. As Sweden grapples with its escalating crisis, the echoes of its past glory serve as a haunting reminder of how swiftly circumstances can change. The country's struggle with gang violence, deteriorating education, and mounting social unrest underscores a profound shift from its storied past. Like and subscribe for more updates.